Congratulations, lucky student, in clicking on this QR code so you can work through this scan tool, which you'll find in the tool room in this case. All right, let's go. From 1996 on, all vehicles are now OBD2, which is a consistent, uniform kind of way of checking codes. You'll find this kind of plug somewhere near your kneecaps on your vehicle. This is a 1961 Chevy pickup, but the drivetrain is modern. Somewhere by your knees is where this is going to go. I built this truck, so I put this connector down here by my knees so I can make that work. This end is going to connect to the scan tool just like this. Probably a good idea to thread these in nicely. Once the scan tool is plugged in and turned on, you get a screen here. There's usually a warning or a informative window that tells you what kind of stuff is going on. It looks like there's a new firmware update that has more stuff than what my lab covers, but it'll work. I like to go to diagnostics. You can touch it here, or you can work your way with a thumb wheel and OK and back, whatever works for you. We can try auto search. For that, I need to turn the car on. All modern vehicles, when you turn the key to on, lights up all of your warning lights and everything on the vehicle. This is a 1961. We don't warn you with anything. We don't have warning lights. We don't have seat belts. We don't have airbags. We die like men. This is my check engine light on this vehicle, and it's telling me the check engine light works. It's not saying anything. The engine is not running. It's just letting you know the bulb works. You want to make sure when you're buying a car that bulb is on when the key is on, but the engine is not running. It tells you someone didn't just delete the bulb because you got 400 check engine lights on there. With this thing plugged in and on and connected, I like to go to diagnostics. And then auto search will usually work. And in this case, the drivetrain is not original. Okay, so it's going to find what this original drivetrain came out of. In theory, it should be able to figure out what the serial number is because that's imprinted in the computer of your car. If not, you can type it in manually as well. We're going to see if this roulette wheel of love will be lucky. In this case, this Chevy van drivetrain does have throttle actuated control. And I don't know what radio it came with, so let's do up level radio and say good. I don't know which one my vehicle has. Let's pick one. So we've got system scan, system selection, a health report's a good one. It's going to go and look at all the modules in the vehicle and decide what's going on. And what I like about this scan tool is it talks to all the other modules, where a cheaper scan tool is just going to talk to the engine and transmission, and you may or may not talk to other modules. This is going to be interesting because it's going to go like, hang on, supplemental inflatable restraint. The airbag system has a problem. Yes, it's missing. I didn't put it in here. I do have a powertrain module. It looks like I have 2 check engine lights. So let's go enter into that. And then we've got read fault codes, clear the fault codes, read the data stream, and the emission system information. Let's look at read the fault code. Diagnostic trouble code display. And it's going to find out what those codes are. And right now it says, oh my gosh, we have some significant problems with a mass airflow sensor on this vehicle. We have these codes because I deleted the mass airflow sensor and then hacked the computer to fail the mass airflow sensor right away and then not show me any check engine lights or malfunction indicator lamps because I know it's not there. I know it failed. You don't need to tell me. Reasons. That's like a level 3 thing. We'll talk about that in Boost when we get there. I can clear the codes. I don't recommend clearing the codes until you figure out why are they there and test and confirm what's going on. If I clear these, my engine's going to run a little bit weird until it fails the mass airflow sensor. So I'm not going to clear those at all. So I'm going to go back. On page 3 of the lab, you're going to list down here at the bottom all the different modules that your vehicle has that this scan tool can talk to. And whether you have codes or no codes, you'll let me know what kind of stuff is going on there. We're going to explore these different modules and see what's going on, and it might tell you something about your car you didn't know. Then you're going to show this to me, get me to sign that as I check it off, and lead you through what's going to happen next. On this page, we're going to look at specific codes and list what they are. If you have no codes, good for you. The student record for codes is 15 codes that were up on a student's vehicle. Live data is where I tend to spend the most of my time because it helps me diagnose things. And these are typical. And here's the thing. The scan tools will tell you what the scan tool can tell you based on what the scan tool can tell you and what the car is willing to tell the scan tool. So to say whether this scan tool can test everything on every car, I don't know. You play with this, get in there, poke around, explore, it'll tell you what's going on. So I want to read the data stream, which is going to here, and engine data would be nice. And engine data 1, data 2, fuel trim, blah, 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 blah. We got a bunch of things we can look at. Let's go to engine data 1. And, over here I've got select all. So I'm going to do that and go OK. You can pick different ones. Depending on what I'm looking at, I might want to look at 3 things that are important to me. The rest I don't care about. In this case, let's look at all of them. It's probably going to get me to run the vehicle. So we'll wait till it finishes loading. And I'll start it up. Hopefully it won't be too loud for you guys in here. Freaking 4-inch exhaust. So here is the data. I'm going to fire this up. So there's a bunch of stuff here that the computer can talk to you. This is your throttle or pedal position. Apparently I don't have the air conditioning on. Let's turn the AC on and see if I'm talking to the computer about that. So I just turned the AC on, which is quite nice. It knows the AC is turned on. Barometric pressure and PSI, crank signal, because the way this thing works, there's a bunch of neat stuff you can look at. This is the amount of airflow for idle. We've got a desired RPM speed, engine coolant temperature, and a lot of these are kind of handy. If we go back to throttle position, there's a graph here. I can click on that graph and it's just going to scroll along. It's reading roughly the percentage of indicated angle. If I blip the gas pedal, it's going to show you that. If I go nice and slow, so it's giving you that data, which is kind of handy. So there's all these different ones that you can look at inside here. Engine load, engine runtime, RPM, evaporative emission stuff, fuel levels, all kinds of things that whatever the vehicle is looking at. And I'm going to ask from you a bunch of different sensors. So on this sheet, I want to know how many trouble codes do you have? DTC, CNT, diagnostic trouble code count. In my case, I've got 2. What's your engine coolant temperature temp? Intake air temperature. These should be expected temperatures. Throttle position at idle should be pretty low. RPM should be your idle speed. They may fluctuate a little bit. That's okay. Load or percentage of load, and there might be different names for this depending on what your car is. This is general. Just like the engine rebuild lab that you did in level 1, I write my lab to try to fit as many different vehicles as I can, and it might not fit your vehicle exactly. Short-term fuel trim is your ADHD of fuel correction. It's like right now, I need more fuel, I need less fuel, I need more fuel, I need less fuel, and you'll see it doing all kinds of things. Long-term is, generally speaking, long-term, overall, it's eating more fuel or it's eating less fuel. And if it's going like more than 8%, I would start looking at that. Like, why is it adding or pulling fuel? Short term, I don't worry too much. This is the voltage for the oxygen sensor. They typically stay around 0.47 volt, but fluctuate for like 0.2, 0.9, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That's just where the computer's like, rich, whoa, lean, rich, oh, lean, and it just keeps retuning all the time. Let's see if we can pull that one up. Let's back up a second. Long-term fuel trim. Mine is at 0 because I turned that off on my computer. Reasons. Here's the short-term fuel trim. And you can, I don't know if you can see it from there. Let's zoom in. So you can see the short-term fuel trim. It's pulling a lot, pulling a little, pulling a lot, pulling a little, and they're kind of roughly the same percentages on both banks of this V8. I'm not too worried about it as long as it looks about the same. And it's adding fuel, pulling it out again, adding a fuel, or in this case, pulling fuel, not pulling fuel, pulling fuel, not pulling fuel. Here's my spark advance, which also fluctuates. It's faster for a computer to correct your idle speed by adding timing to increase the idle speed and pulling timing to decrease the idle speed. So I know I've tuned this to have an idle spark timing at 20, and oh, there's my 22.5. And so it's doing what it can to control the idle speed. Okay, it's just what it does. It's neat to see what it's doing. If these are like not moving at all, you might have a problem with your oxygen sensors or something else. No active theft deterrent, because that's a different system on this vehicle. Back to the lab. Last couple ones on the bottom are the manifold absolute pressure and the spark advance, which will fluctuate. Give me your rough average there. And I want you to circle any of these that have a graph like I showed you. If we go back to, here it is, short-term fuel, and take a look at the spark, this is going to be all over the map because it's pulling fuel, it's pulling a little bit less fuel, a little bit less fuel, and this is just how it's correcting. Oh, no correction. Oh, yeah. And so it's just fine-tuning and fine-tuning. That's the joy of fuel injection. It fine-tunes all the time as you drive. There isn't any such thing as a tune-up anymore. Your car is tuning while you're driving. So that's kind of cool. The next part we're going to look at is the emission control, which you can probably find in here where we just were, and go to OBD and IM. It'll connect. Once it's connected, for the lab, I want you to go into readiness completed and readiness not completed. And so we're going to go into there. Should be able to hit enter and see what it has. And these will be all the different modes in here. So we'll go into IM readiness, ready status after diagnostic trouble code. These are all the things that's being monitored by the engine. So because I haven't driven it, the O2 sensors haven't done their sequence to make sure they work. The EGR was never installed on this engine, even from GM, so that's not supported. These are not ready. I have to drive for those to turn up, and you got to drive through a certain series of, like a certain distance, certain kind of operating ranges to make sure that everything is okay. I don't have a particulate filter because I don't have diesel. I don't have an air system monitor because it never showed up. The VAP monitor is apparently ready, which baffles me because I should have hacked that thing. So it doesn't look like I have anything I can play with here. It's just telling me what's ready and what's not ready. On your lab, you'll write down the tests that are ready, the ones that are not ready. In some places where we do emission testing for pollution, we got to make sure that everything's ready and your ECU is happy. In our particular part of Canada, we don't do emissions testing at all, so nobody's going to check and nobody's really going to care. However, we got to breathe this air, so you might as well try to take care of your vehicle. You get me to check that, and then I'll tell you what's next. The next part of the lab talks about going into the onboard monitoring. In the diagnostics, we've got all these different modes, and the modes kind of give you different things. Where I want to look next is mode 6, which is your onboard monitoring test, and we can check into that. Looks like the oxygen monitor testing is done. The enhanced evaporative system monitor, the fuel tank stuff, has failed. I'm aware of that. This is a 61 Chevy. I have no emission controls for the evaporative emission, so that test has failed. We can click it and see what happens. Where did it fail? I'm curious that it passed any of these with no evaporative emissions at all. So weak vacuum test, let's click on that and see what it'll do. May not let me do anything in there. I'm curious that it passed. That's kind of weird. So my mode 6 gives me all the tests that it's done, and it can tell you where it's failed. In this case, odd that my O2 sensor heater has failed. Evaporative system failed. That's curious. We might have to look at that. So that gives you an idea of why is this thing not passing emissions. Let's go to mode 8. So mode 8 is controlling operation of onboard components and systems. We'll click on that. So the bottom part of this page talks about mode 8, which has you pick any 4 tests that you want to do, and you can make the scan tool perform that test. It forces the computer to do that. In my case, this car model does not support the function of these tests. So I say, okay, let's try again just to make sure. And it could be my computer is just a little bit too old and it does not understand bi-directional controls. So in this case, I can't perform this page of the book. I may pull up in the video doing this on a different vehicle. So this is my Hyundai Accent. It's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. We can go into mode 8 and it sends a command. Not quite sure what to do with it, but there we go. We can go to live data, select all, and let's go in there and see if it sent something. Commanded evaporative purge. It's not asking it to purge. I got some kind of weird thing going on with the evap pressure. Might just be the sensor is cacked. I'm not sure why it would read no engine runs at minus 97 kilopascals. It sent that command in the mode test, and then now it's like, well, we can't do that again. Thanks. Good luck. So these are some of the optional things that you can do on your vehicle with this scan tool. And you'll find that down here in maintenance. So click on maintenance, and I've got a bunch of different options on here, which has changed since I wrote this lab, but that's okay. Play with this, explore, see what it'll do. It'll help you bleed brakes through the ABS system. If you have brake pads that need to be reset, that you have new brakes. If you replace the battery, you got to tell the computer that you have a new battery now, so that it can deal with the charging system and know that you have a new battery. I accidentally clicked that. Let's see what it does. It's probably going to say we don't support that. Oh, it doesn't like it. Let's go to GM. Let's see if we can get there. Ignition is on. I'm going to turn it off just for a second to keep it on. Automatically search. Yes. On. So, in my case, that battery refreshing thing doesn't work on this vehicle. That's fine. Diesel particulate filter, electronic throttle, that I can probably mess with. I'm not going to, but play with this, explore. If you change the throttle body or have done something, you might need to tell the computer to relearn what the throttle's doing. Play with this. This can apparently redo or set your tire pressure monitors, steering angle sensor, reset the service interval for oil changes, and a lot of this can play with a lot of things. Play with it. Explore with your car. Let's do oil reset. I guess if it's fresh oil, I put in a percentage. That's kind of interesting. Well, let's try 50% and see what it does. Okay, so I can change what the quality of my engine oil life is right here. Well, I've never done it that way before, but that's kind of cool. I know I'm halfway to getting to an oil life reset. I'm halfway to an oil change. So that's pretty cool. I have anything on the dashboard that's going to tell me where the oil service needs to be. So there we are. Injector coating, that could be interesting. So setting this to match new injectors. It does a lot of stuff, which is kind of cool. So, not a lot of sprays to write in, but what optional features did you play with on your car? And play with it, explore. It's not likely going to wreck anything. Just find out what it can do. And depending on what you're doing, you might need some of this. So that's the lab. That's the scan tool. I do have copies of this on my website, gvolvo.com. I will update it as I see fit over the next number of years. But that's the basic rundown of this task right here. Ta-da! As always, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you again.